So, 2.6, rational functions. Let's finish this chapter up. Quick review. How do you get a vertical asymptote? A number over 0. How do you get a whole? A 0 over 0. Whatever you substitute in gets you a 0 over 0. All right? And then how do you get a horizontal asymptote? You need to look at the what? The higher powers. What if the higher power is on the bottom? Y equals 0. What if the higher powers are the same? You look at the leading coefficients. And then what if the higher power is up top? There is none. To be assessed on your test upcoming. All right, so I'm going to be asking for lots of things, and then I'm going to have you sketch a graph. All right, so this is what more of is going to happen. So I got g of x is equal to 3 over x minus 2, and I need to find the x and y intercepts, vertical asymptotes, horizontal asymptotes, and its domain. Remember, the domain is everything but the vertical asymptotes and the wholes. All right, so let's put this into practice. I like to do vertical asymptotes first. When am I going to have a vertical asymptote? What am I going to get for a number over 0? X equals 2. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start sketching the graph as I go along. Once I have that, I can also do my domain. What would my domain be then? Negative infinity to 2, and then 2 to infinity. Now let's do the horizontal asymptote. Where's my higher power? They're on the bottom. All right. I actually have a power of 0 up top. In the bottom, I have a power of 1. So my bottom's bigger, so then I get what? 0. Y equals 0. All right. So y equals 0 is another name for what? The x-axis. All right. So now how do we find a y-intercept? We substitute in what? 0 in for x. So if I substitute in 0 for x, what do I get? Negative 3 halves. So my intercept is the ordered pair 0, comma, negative 3 halves. All right. And so if I put that there, I got 0, comma, negative 3 halves going down right there. How do I find an x-intercept? I substitute in 0 for y. So then I end up having 0 is equal to 3 over x minus 2. But then we really multiply by x minus 2. So 0 times x minus 2 is 0. So I get 0 is equal to 3. Does that ever happen? No. So do we have an x-intercept? No. So you say none or does not exist. I'd take either option on your assessment. So now we're ready to sketch our little graphy graph. Do I know if it's going to hug up or if it's going to hug down? It's going to hug down because I already have a test point. All right. So this is going to start hugging down there. And then on the other side, is it going to hug up or is it going to hug down? Do I know yet? No. So this is when I test something. So I need to test something to the right of 2. So let's pick 3. So if I substitute in 3, if I find g of 3, what would I get up top? 3 over 1. So is that above or below y equals 0? It's above. So I'm sketching it above. All right. All right, this next one, I have f of x is equal to 2x minus 1 over x. So we're going to find all of these things going on. So I like to start out with my vertical asymptote. When do I get a vertical asymptote? At x equals 0. All right, at x equals 0. X equals 0 is another name for what? The y-axis. All right. So I could do my domain now too, so I'm going to do it. So what's my domain? Negative infinity to 0, and then 0 to infinity. All right. Now let's do horizontal asymptote. So what should I look for? The higher powers. Where's my higher power? They're the same. So what do I get? Y equals 2. All right. So now I have y equals 2 going on. Now let's test for x and y intercepts. So let's start out with x or y-intercept. We substitute in 0 in for x. What happens when we substitute 0 in for x? What do I get? I get negative 1 over 0. So that's undefined. Why do I not have a y-intercept? Because I have a vertical asymptote. Are they ever allowed to touch a vertical asymptote? No. Never, ever. Okay? In all of mathematics, you will never have that happen. All right? I think I can actually say that. All right, an x-intercept. I substitute in what? 0 in for y. So now I have 0 equals 2x minus 1. It's really over x, but I'm just going to multiply by it. So what do I get? I get 1/2. So I need to make that into an ordered pair. So I get 1/2 comma 0. And so now I can actually sketch that little guy. So I got 1/2 comma 0. Now that tells me what it does to the right of my vertical asymptote, does it not? Does it hug up or does it hug down? It hugs down. So we're going to show that it hugs down right there. But do I know if it hugs up or down on this other one? No, I don't. So I'm going to use a test point. So what should we test? Like -1. All right, so if I substitute in -1, what do I get up top? I get -3 over -1, which is 3. Is that above or below y equals 2? It's above it. So what do we know? It hugs up. All right. So now I have x over x squared minus x minus 2. Anytime I see a quadratic, what do I suggest you do to it? I suggest you F it up. All right. So I want to change the way this looks. So I got x up top, and then what does the bottom factor to? X minus 2, x plus 1. All right. Again, I like to start out with vertical asymptotes first. So when do I get a number over 0? At x equals 2 and x equals -1. So that's where I like to start my sketchy sketch. All right. If I find horizontal asymptotes, what do I need to look for? The higher power. Where's the higher power? It's the bottom. So what do we get? We get y equals 0. So we get y equals 0 going on right there. Now we could do our domain before we forget about it. What would be my domain? -infinity to -1, and then -1 to 2, and then 2 to infinity. All right. Now let's do our x and y intercepts, or our y and x intercepts. So if we substitute in 0 for x, what would we get? What do I get up top? I get 0 over -2, right? So I get 0 over -2, which is still 0. All right, so I get my y-intercept of 0, comma 0. Now, Zach, this is kind of what we're talking about here. All right, where was this thing located? It was on a what? Horizontal asymptote. However, this is deemed not the end behavior. Do you see how it's in between them? It is not deemed the end behavior. All right, it's not the furthest left or the furthest right of it. All right, so that's why it's allowed to cross or touch. So there we go. An x-intercept, we substitute in 0 for y. So guess what we get again? 0, 0. All right. So our x and y intercepts are actually the same here. Now, I don't know much of what this does. I don't know if it's going to hug here, or hug here, or hug up, or hug down, or hug up, or hug down, or hug over here, or over here. So I actually need to have 4 test points. Now, this one's actually kind of nice because my horizontal is what? Y equals 0. So all I really care about is if it's going to be positive or negative. So I want to teach you a trick here. So let's pick left of -1. So like f of what? -2 sounds great. So what would my numerator be? Would it be positive or negative if I substitute in a -2? It's a negative. So I have a negative, over, if I substitute in negative 2 here, I get a what here? Negative 2 minus 2 would still be negative 4, which makes it a negative. Now, do I actually care about the negative 4 part of it? Not really. All right. And then if I substitute a negative 2 right there, that would be a negative. So I have a negative over a negative negative, which makes it a negative. All right. If I have 3, because the bottom would be positive, I'd have a negative over a positive, really. All right. So I get a negative. So what does that tell me? Am I going to hug up or am I going to hug down? I'm going to hug down. All right. So now I got this guy hugging down. Now, I have a point here at 0, 0, but I need to go in between this and my vertical asymptote. So I could test something like what? Negative 1/2. So I'm going to test something like negative 1/2. So what would I have in my numerator if I substitute a negative 1/2? A negative. What would I have in this part? That'd be a negative. What would I have that part? I'd have a positive. So I have a negative over a negative, which makes it a positive. So what's it going to do from this 0? Is it going to hug up or is it going to hug down? It's going to hug up. See how we did that? All right, so what's in between 0 and 2? 1 sounds great. I'd like to use 1 as well. All right, so now let's test 1. So what do I get up top? A positive over a negative times a positive. So what do I get there? I get a negative. So which way is it going to go? Is it going to go back up or is it going to go down now? It's going to go down. All right. All right, now what should we test? Something like 3. All right. So now if we test 3, what do I get up top? A positive over a positive, positive, which makes it a positive. So is it going to hug up or is it going to hug down? It's going to hug up. And so there is my sketch of that graph. All right. Pretty cool. All right, so if I got x squared minus 9 over the quantity x squared minus 2x minus 3. How many quadratics do I have going on here? I got 2 of them. What you going to do to them? You're going to F them up. All right. So what does the top F up to? X plus 3 and x minus 3. What's the bottom F up to? X minus 3 and x plus 1. What happened? I got a hole. What cancels? X minus 3 cancels. So I get a hole. Where is this hole going to be located? At x equals what? At 3. Now, how do I ooh, snap, I just told you. How do I get my y value? How do I get my y value? I take 3 and do what? I back substitute in what's called the simpler function. So now I'm going to substitute it in here. And so I'd end up with 3 plus 3, which is 6 over 4. That could simplify to what? 3/2. So I have a hole going on at 3 comma 3/2. So I'm going to put that hole right there. All right, now let's do vertical asymptotes. So where's my vertical asymptote? X equals -1. All right. Now I had this question asked first period. Is x equals 3 a vertical asymptote as well? Is it? It is not. Why is it not? It's 0 on the bottom, agreed? However, what's also what up top? It's also 0 up top. A 0 over 0 creates the hole. All right. It's still a domain issue. So we can actually do our domain now. So our domain would go from -infinity to what? -1. And then -1 to 3. And then 3 to infinity. All right. It's included in my domain issue. All right. It's said to be discontinuous at those x equal numbers. All right. All right. So let's do horizontal asymptote. So what do I look for? Higher power. What do we get? They're the same, so we get y equals 1. So now I have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 1. All right, now let's do x and y intercept. How do we solve for a y-intercept? Oh, snap. I substitute in 0 for x. So what do I get? 0, comma. Use your simpler function, guys. 3 over 1, which is 3. All right. And x-intercept. I substitute in 0 for my y. So now I have 0 equals x plus 3. So what do I get? I get negative 3, comma 0. All right. So when I graph those, I got 0, comma 3 right there. And I have negative 3, comma 0 right there. Do I need any test points? Do I need any test points? No. Is it going to hug up? No, it's going to hug what? Down. It's going to hug down. All right, because I already have my point right there. And then I also know that this one's going to hug up. All right. And there we go. Pretty good? All right. And there you go. Real quick review. Vertical asymptote, how do I want you to think of it? A number over 0. How do you think of a whole? 0 over 0. How do you think of a horizontal asymptote? When your higher power is on the bottom, you got what? Y equals 0. If your higher powers are the same, what do you got? Y equals the coefficients. What about higher power up top? You got nothing. All right. X-intercept, how do you do it? You substitute in 0 for y. And y-intercept, you substitute in 0 for x. Your domain is everything but your holes and your vertical asymptotes. All right. There is a review at the end of your chapter exercises on Canvas. It starts at page 206. I am not asking you to do 1 through 137 odd. However, everything in that will be covered. Okay? So figure out what you don't know very well, and that's what you guys come in with on Tuesday. Okay?